welcoming anybody else back. Hopefully Drew and Yong and possibly even Paul may be joining us.
Hopefully. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Hello,
Okay.
I'm back as well.
Welcome.
I
Hey,
am
Drew.
really
Hey,
tired. I'd
Yong.
like to do a little dance.
Let me just do a quick dance for you.
Hey, Paul, as well. Good to have you, sir.
Hi. I'm good.
You're here tomorrow, which is great. You're taking over hosting duties.
I am indeed. Terrifying prospect.
It's good. I'm glad you're here. Look, I mean, thank you very much. Now, if anybody does have any questions for Yong and Drew, especially on geophysics, or for Jonathan or for Paul, my co-hosts in crime, please do share them now up on Slido. Perhaps what I'll do is I'll clear the questions that we've just been asked out. One of the ones I wanted to, though, have a bit of a discussion about, which I think is a great question, and one of the ones that led on from Monica in the last Q&A, is around psychological safety in the workplace. Now, do we all think we are operating in a psychologically safe space? Regardless, I mean, I get it when now a lot of us working from home or having our homes put on stilts and raised off the ground by great heights. But do we have enough psychological safety in the workspace?
I'm happy to go first on that, and just to say hi to everybody, because I'm streaming this on VR as well, and in Facebook, if you're unfortunately one of my Facebook friends. But yeah, very interesting. I love the presentation. I've been watching it, which is why my head's so sweaty in VR. And you know, part of it is this interaction with other people. So obviously, Christopher, Chris, it's nice to see you've wandered over to say hello, and now he's disappeared. But yeah, so part of this interacting with other people, and actually today is a monumental day in the sense of not only are we running one of the first of its kind VR-based interactions, but actually that Slack's been acquired by SAP. And that's a really interesting, if you remember Chatter, the idea with Salesforce was this concept of everyone in the organization from warehouse to the CEO can all talk to each other. You know, so Slack, that acquisition by SAP seems like a real interesting kind of what is the future, because we're using Slack, as you can see on my screen at the moment. Well, you can't because it's highlighting just the app, but I've got Slack running. But you know, part of it is that's part of our everyday lives now. And so I was chatting with the Microsoft team and my friend Claudie, who works at Microsoft, who's an evangelist for Microsoft Teams, and she was showcasing to me and giving me some tips around some of the neurodiversity functionality that they're bringing into Teams. So you know, you may already, if you've got Teams in your workplace, or you've got using the Office suite, which is kind of most places now, you'll notice that there's something called Insights. So Insights will talk to you about what you're doing in the day, so how much time you're spending in meetings, how much time you're spending on emails, all that digital grind, but it'll also talk to you about potentially taking breaks and maybe, you know, booking time to speak to people within the organizations. I know Theo brought up the ologies last time, and the joke around, you know, where I'll wander over to Theo, you know, the joke where, you know, like billions, you need a performance coach, right? You need a performance coach in your organization so that you can kind of say, you know, I'm feeling down, or I'm not performing as good as I can. And so it's interesting that Microsoft are building these features in. I can expect Slack, now the SAP things come through, to be thinking about, you know, mental health, mental illness. Dave brought it up about the potential massive outbreak of the mental illness pandemic in February, which is what the UK government are kind of also looking at, about people, you know, getting used to having to work in these kind of environments and not having someone to talk to. So, you know, I did a podcast quite recently with somebody from the Ministry of Testing, who was kind of saying, you know, it took them a long time to get their friends onto webcams, and you know, part of it is people don't share their webcam, you know, and yes, that could be because they're shy and they're not, you know, an extrovert or an introvert. That, you know, part of it is there's all these new challenges. So that was just a quick bit around technology, and hopefully the rest of the team have some other great insight. And I love the presentations this afternoon, Drew and Young. They were both really fantastic. I love the volcanoes.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, again, who else has got that experience within that's truly psychological safe spaces within organizations, or not, if they've experienced where it hasn't been great? Jonathan shared some great examples just then, but it would be great to hear from, obviously, Young, Paul and Drew as well.
So for me, I changed teams in the middle of the lockdown, and the psychological safety has always been very good, and everyone knows each other, you know exactly whom to ask, every time you have a question, and people are generally very helpful. But I think while joining a new team during the lockdown, it was quite interesting because it was in a different department. Historically, this team even sat in a different building when we were back in the office. And I have still, up to today, not met them, face down ever. But it was actually quite interesting because it has been a very short time, a few months only. But I think we have come to the kind of circumstances where we know each other beyond the offices. So, you see the surrounding we live in, everyone is very understanding if you might not have a desk or something because you've not, you're not prepared to, or my daughter, for example, keeps walking in and out, although I keep telling her not to. So I think the psychological safety is, I am not going to say it's better because it was never good, but I think it's wider, it's more horizontal. People don't understand and know you only from the work context, but they also know your circumstances, they also know where you come from, and of course not to a point where you would need to compromise your privacy. That's not what I mean, that they would start knowing too much, but there's a lot more leeway to to the generic understanding of your capacity or what you can do.
Yeah, brilliant. Watching John actually put his Christmas hat on the VR headset as well. It's a beautiful look. It's a beautiful sight.
I can make a contribution, Giles, if you want.
Please do. Yes.
Probably older than everyone else on the call. I want to say something about a project I worked on 25 years ago in 1995, and essentially it was an early client server kind of project when client server was the big deal before the internet. And there's about 100 guys. I think there were very few women in this building, and there were no private meeting rooms or anything like that. It was all open plan. It was a project with 5 or maybe 6 teams, and the program management team, 4 or 5 guys, were completely brutal. Blame was part of the day-to-day. What's the word? I can't think of the word, but it's like, it was just part of the daily grind. People who made mistakes, if they released some code that had a bug in, they were publicly humiliated. There was a couple of petitions, and there were kind of a meeting, but everybody could hear everything in the room. And so clearly there was a blame culture, there was a bullying culture, there was no privacy, there was no risk taking for fear of getting blamed, there was no responsibility taken for fear of getting blamed for going wrong. So stuff didn't get done that should get done, and decisions weren't made that should have been made. It was the most unpleasant project I ever worked on. Now that was 25 years ago, and I really wouldn't wish that on anybody, and I sincerely hope those days are long, long gone. And I made a flippant comment privately to Giles and Jonathan a bit earlier, saying that psychological safety is for wimps. Absolutely not. It's absolutely critical for people's personal safety and well-being, but also to make progress. It's a really, really important thing. And I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Paul.
Can I also, sorry, you go.
No, Young, please do.
I just wanted to mention, because you said in your presentation that micromanagement is one of the things that would block agile ways of working. So I think having a good psychological safety would also address this issue, because I think there's if you are micromanaging, there are people who in your team or anywhere who are less likely to take the responsibility because they are worried about that blame. So by having the hands-off approach, you can in this way share the responsibility, enable people, get them to learn, and this also impacts the psychological safety and the management style.
Yeah.
And it also is better for the psychological safety for the manager themselves, because they also don't want to have a blame culture.
Correct. Brilliant. Thank you. It's awesome. And thank you, Paul, for your story. Again, I think there's probably going to be many people here today who have experienced some of those sort of toxic cultures in organizations. I know I have.
Hope not.
Well, I won't even share some of the horror stories I've had, and I'm not even talking 25 years ago. Even though I started, 26 years ago, I believe they've been a lot more recent than that, my friend. Drew, have you got any? Yeah.
Yes. So I know we don't want to share our horror stories from the past, and I'm not going to, other than the fact that I was at one company once where it was common to have these lunch sessions where we talked about our past failures, both internally in the company and at previous companies and previous work. And it was, in terms of psychological safety, it was really great to be able to talk about these failures and the learning opportunities that came from them as the standard practice within the company, because they encouraged learning from failure, which is how it's supposed to be. So I don't want to go into any of our stories here, but as a takeaway for the audience, if you can advocate for starting to talk about failures in your past and in the company's past in a public way, that would go a long way towards psychological safety.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think that's awesome, and also a great way to start wrapping up, obviously, the talks and the QAs and some of the panel discussions as well that we've had from today. I certainly am due to take my wife out for her birthday dinner shortly, 7 o'clock in the evening here in the UK. So I know for a fact I'm going to be in the doghouse if I'm not off soon. I am going to say thank you very much to everybody, to all of our amazing speakers here today who've been at day 2 of the conference. I want to say thank you, obviously, to Drew and Young for being here and the final panel discussion of the day. And obviously looking forward to Paul taking over the helm from me tomorrow and seeing what an amazing job he's going to do with it. And also thanks to Jonathan, as ever, for supporting us behind the scenes and running all of the VR as well. And Jonathan's going to take over with the quiz, or the prize draw, I should say, following on from the talks here today and the panel discussion. But I just want to say to everybody who's come here today and watched all of the amazing speakers sharing all of their insights all the way from this morning to this afternoon and evening, thank you very much for coming along, for being part of this, and look forward to seeing you all for day 3 tomorrow with the world-renowned Paul Girard looking after us all. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone. Jonathan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Well, it's only going to be short because I know you didn't have a quiz. We did think about having a beach party, but that didn't happen. So actually, there's just there's 2 winners. I'm going to do another quiz for Friday because we kind of thought there'd be 2 kind of surprise things that we're going to do. The first one was, which I guess live streaming this is kind of part of that, but we're going to do a live podcast that we're going to put out. So we'll put that into one day. That might be for Paul's session tomorrow, and then on Friday we'll try and do a quiz or something to finish it off. So because I know people enjoyed the quiz, so if they fancy another quiz to give out another voucher, then brilliant. So again, thanks Drew, thanks everyone for this for today. I'm just going to give the prizes out for